tragedy site in New York City that was going to become a peace monument to the integrity of the United States of America and its people. Not today. It's coming. They're working.
It's my mind playing me. It's my mind playing me. It's my mind.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to see them getting it cleaned up, and it's a good job. Something to be proud of, even in the midst of a tragedy.
You make me see what I don't want to look at.
Well, now that we finished seeing the site, it's going to be a great reconstruction to be seen by all the world. And some of it will be beautiful, and some of it will not be. Because they're going to have to pull down a lot of buildings to put up what will stay and be part of the new New York area.
The thought of coming down here and talking to you people about education, and that's a big word. I really don't know what the word really means, but I can use it a lot and I can spell it most of the time. So I did look it up, and it said something like coming in line with a purpose, calling forward from within you that you want to do. And isn't that just a real neat answer? Except, what do I want to do? Have you ever sit and looked in the mirror and go, why are you here? What do you want to do today? I don't want to do yesterday, it was boring. And today's looking pretty much the same. And I'm pretty much with the same people. And I don't know what to do about that. So I guess I'll just go along with it and have another boring day. That happened to me a few times. So I sit down in front of a mirror, pull up a chair, looked in the mirror, and saw some smudges on the mirror, so I had to take care of those. You must realize if you're looking in a mirror, you have to clean them. How many of you ladies know what I'm talking about? Yeah, right. You have to do that. That's preparation for making yourself perfect. And the more I sit and look, the more I realize that I didn't have a real good mirror. It had some funny flaws in it. And as I would move side to side, it would sort of give my face a little different perspective. So I decided I would stand up and look. And I remembered back to when I was very young, going to, I don't know if it was a house of horrors or a fun house, but one of the first things you get to see is yourself in a mirror, not looking anything about what you look like. Usually your legs are real short and your body's real long. And so you get to walk for a long time through all these mirrors, getting a lot of looks at who you are. And looking in the mirror, you think that's you. You think that's you. After you laugh for a while, you realize that's not you, because you probably don't laugh like that. Most people are more serious about their academic preparation. I've gone through a few tests where I sit before the test came and sit there and put my head on the book in front of me and cried. And then woke up the next morning and went and took the examination and got a good grade. And that was when I realized that there was such a thing as sleep learning. That there's no way I could possibly have gotten that through studying it. When I look back over my education, it's not real long in terms of academic-wise. I've been in a lot of institutions studying things. But I came to a conclusion quite a few years ago that no matter what school I went to, I kept taking myself with me. And it was like, this quarter I'm going to register for 18 credits and get A's in every class. And 3 weeks later, I'm hoping for B's in some. And 6 weeks later, I'm hoping to get at least a C in one and to pass some others. And you get right towards the end and you're hoping you don't get D's and F's. And so you do study real hard in 1 week what you should have been studying for 6 or 8 weeks. And that's academic education. What that was, in my case, was thinking that I was going to find out what they would ask, get the answer, and give it back to them. How many have had that type of education? University of Santa Monica doesn't function like that, and I would bet that some of these others don't function like that either, because it's based upon the ability to do. And I found there's two types of counseling that take place. There are a lot of approaches to it, but just really two. One is the counseling from the ego, and the other is the counseling from yourself. And when you counsel from the ego, you find out what Rogerian counseling was about and what Glasser counseling about, and you're young, and you learn all that. And so when somebody comes in, you hope they're going to be a classical casebook study. And I never found one. All of them were a little bit of something. But I have found out, and I've talked to a lot of you people individually, that the best type of counseling was for me to sit still long enough to hear what it was you wanted to know. And if you had a mind like mine, they could use me in the National Enquirer, like inquiring minds want to know. Oh, my mind wanted to know everything, and the why and the how come, and I found out it wasn't necessary. I didn't have to do that. But what I did have to do was to find out who was going to do counseling. The type of counseling that I deal with is it's either got to come right now, right here, to be dealt with, or it's not going to be dealt with. What we do, of course, is we tape everything that I say and do, not for anybody else. It's for me to go back and find out what was said, so if I see if I can learn something. Because I open consciousness and let what is going to come through, come through. Now, this could be one of your worst night lectures you've ever experienced, and that will not be my fault. Because I'm not responsible for memory. I am irresponsible. Well, actually, I am responsible because I remember when I was young, and anytime there was any problem, my mother used to say, Roger's responsible. So I know I am a responsible person. And then my brother, who was in town visiting with me, told me that he thought that he was the responsible one in the family because they said that about him. And so we looked at his wife and said, what do you think? And she just turned around and walked out the door. And that's called talk to the back of my head type of counseling. She's just getting out of there. So he and I looked at each other and we just started laughing. Now, one of the signs of the presence of the Spirit in and around you is when you start to laugh. And if it's really, truly the Spirit coming in, it will get you to laugh at an inappropriate time to see whether you're willing to obey and follow the Spirit or whether you're controlling things. And the church that I grew up in was a church of many laughs, because we'd sit in the back row and somebody would do something and we would try to not laugh. Now, I'll tell you one thing, that's failure time right there. So we would all pretend like we were coughing or sneezing because that was the way that you were able to get away with it. Otherwise, you'd be reprimanded by a religious dignitary of the church. In school, they were a scholarly dignitary, and they hit you with a long ruler. It was 3 feet long. We used to look at them, how long it was, and then somebody would swing the yardstick and would stand just far enough back. We knew where it was, so when they swing, they would miss. But they'd be close enough that you could fake a hit. So I grew up in a high school, in a school, learning all sorts of things about how not to do things and how to get away with something. And if you do that good enough, you also can get pretty good grades. And in high school, I did it good enough. In college, I wasn't prepared enough. So it was hard. But the nice thing about it is, if you can't do it, then it doesn't matter what your academic preparation was. You're not getting what's going on. Getting what's going on and being able to translate that through you into the other person, and they reach to receive, is a form of spiritual counseling. They're open to receive, and you're open to receive. And all it comes down to, in a real short way of saying it, is you become as one. And you're both the speaker and the listener. I have never counseled anybody that I didn't know that I needed part of that counseling myself. And I would write notes. This part was not for them, it was for me. And I would tell them, I think that part was for me. And they say, no, that was for me because I know right where it fits. And we would start talking about where it fit them and where it fit me. And all of a sudden, there was a healing action taking place. Because you come to a place inside of you where you're no longer a deviant, a pervert, a crazy person. You come to the place where someone else has had an experience like yours, and they're alive and they're healthy. And they start to tell you about a few others like that. And then you find out, well, I'll give you an example. I grew up in the Mormon church. Very fine church to grow up in. They used to have a Tuesday night meeting. And the Tuesday night meeting was Mutual Improvement Association. But there's something else. You understand that the short-term memory is working. And I am tap dancing information, just in case you people aren't watching close. I'd like you to just be able to appreciate how difficult this is. And one of the elders of the church in that area said, write on the piece of paper something that you would like to not have in your life. And I didn't say those words. He was much clever. And I wrote, I want my mind to leave me alone. And we passed all the papers up. And he read through some as he was answering them and was thumbing through the others. And I'm sitting back down there being very masculine, very smart, very contented, very, you know what it's like. You know, I had a short haircut, you know the whole thing. I didn't need army boots. I could wear cowboy boots. You just couldn't wear them in the church. That was the problem. And he finally said, here's one. And he said, he wrote it, read it. He said, who wrote this one? You just don't want to raise your hands at times. It's like, And he said, this one, I think, is probably the most important one that you youngsters have to deal with. And all the things you deal with is how your mind keeps talking to you. And I was slowly raising my hand as I wrote that. I wrote that one. And he finally said, you wrote that, right? And I said, yeah. And somebody said, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. So they passed it around to see whose handwriting it was. And it came back, somebody looked and they said, it's his. Because I had that type of handwriting that everybody knows. That's their handwriting. Nobody ever looked on my paper to cheat, to get answers, because nobody could read the writing. And I often thought that's how I got through some of my grades, as a teacher said, well, I don't know what that is, but I'll let it go. Then he said, how many of you have trouble in here with your minds doing things to you? And he listed a series of them. And it's, instead of holding your hand up once, and then you put it down, then he reads another, and I found out I was just keeping my hand up in the air. Everything he read, I was the one that started it. I owned it. It was mine. That was my problem. And then when he got through, he said, there was only one honest person in here. So we all look around to see who that might be, because in our group, there was nobody honest. I mean, honesty got you in trouble. You lied. You would say no. Right in the midst of the yes, you'd say no. And then they'd have to prove it. And he said, the only one that's honest, and he mentioned my name. And boy, I'm telling you, if you want to talk about mixed emotions, it's like, yeah, no. Yeah, no. Because, yeah, I wanted to be honest, but as soon as I stood up, I would have no more friends. Because I knew how the gangs worked. And he said, you, and he pointed at me, he says, you're honest. And I said, no, I'm not. No, I'm not honest. He says, yes, you are. I said, no, I'm not. He said, well, you are, because you wrote down honestly what it was that was going on. I said, I think it's probably a mistake. He says, I'm going to talk to your dad. I said, I know you are going to talk to my dad. You work for him. You're going to talk to him tomorrow. I'm going to talk to him tonight. See, I know that the first sailor to the captain's got the best story, whether it's true or not. And so when I go home and there was my father, and I go up to him to tell him everything that's going on, he says, I just don't want to hear it. I'm tired, and I don't want to hear any noise out of you kids tonight. I said, Dad, you got to hear this noise. And it was, go to bed. And it's like, no, Dad. And he just stood up, and he started to take his belt off. My dad was one of these guys that could whip the belt off and go, whoosh, and smack you and put it back on again. And you go, how'd he do that? And he could do it, he could hit you with the belt buckle or the other end. And there was no child abuse line. You know what there was is you learned to duck and get out of the way, and when he says go to bed, you would go to bed. You would do that. You would just get out of there. And if he said, right now, before he finished the ow part, you were out the door. And so when you grow up with somebody who has a certain type of discipline built into them that they're sharing with you, you learn to keep your eyes sort of like watching. If they make a move, you watch where they're going to see what they're going to do. He was really a good teacher for me. He was really a good counselor for me, because you get taught a lot of things at the end of a belt. Now, I don't want to leave my mother out of this, because she grabbed a broom and hit me with it. I often thought my mother was going to grab the broom and hit me with the edge that you brush things with. She'd turn around and hit you with the wood end. She was not stupid. She knew which end hurt. And so there's no need to go from father to mother and mother to father to try to get them to gang up on each other. So that's what counseling's about. so that I could get free. The thing to do was to do what they said, do it as good as possible, and get out of there and come back around. Next day I come home and my dad said, I didn't raise you to go to this church up here and argue with one of the elders. I said, nobody raised me to do that. And he looked at me. I said, I did it all on my own. Now, if I'd have said my mother did it, you couldn't lie to my father and mother. You could. But they're like these type of people. They go, don't you ever lie to me again. And by that time, you're bloody. And so you just didn't lie to them just to save yourself. And I remember once my mother hit me real hard and it hurt her hand. I said, it serves you right. And I thought, ooh. And she walked out of the room and I was going, Mom, I was really going to say something else. I was really on my way to say something else. Mom, I really was, I don't know what I was going to tell you, Mom, but I knew that she was going in to write it down to remember to tell my dad because she also had short-term memory. But I knew my mother could be romanced. But sometimes I didn't know how to do it. So I'd ask my brother. And he'd say, I don't know, you shouldn't have done that one. Shouldn't have done that one. When Dad gets home, you're going to get killed. See, that's counseling too. Do you understand that? So you sit and you think about how you're going to get killed. You just hope it doesn't hurt. I can tell you one thing. Getting killed hurts. Dying doesn't. Because every day you don't get something, you get killed by it, and it hurts. But no, dying is risk-free. You know, I think somebody else sell insurance. Well, they do, don't they? Call it life insurance? Now, that to me has got to be real strange why people would buy life insurance, because nobody's going to make sure you stay alive. Everybody here going to not die? I'll raise my hand. I'm not going to. That's my friend who starts laughing. He says, you're going to die. I'm going to kill you. If you come into the center that we've been in here for the last 10 minutes, where it's just been playful, it's been quiet, I bet you it wouldn't take too much for me to get you to start saying all sorts of things to clear problems out of you. I bet it wouldn't take too long. Usually when I bet somebody like that, I go, let's check and see. So, see, this puts me on the spot because I was listening to a spiritual voice. Tell me about this. And like most times when I get the spiritual voice, it'll say, okay, now the next thing that's going on will be this. So I say, okay, the next thing that's going on is going to be this. And I get there and there's nothing there. And I say, I'm not smart enough to make it up, and I can't fake it because everybody's watching and they're all with me. So I have to tell them exactly what the humiliation is that you have to go through and how you have to humble yourself. And it's almost like inside of you going, please, God, you've always been there. So that's manipulation type, right? Be there now. That's pleading. And this doesn't work. It only seems to work that if I find out where inside it's taking place and I come to it and I say, it doesn't matter what anybody else says or thinks, because you're going to say and think all sorts of things in this world. It matters what we do together. It matters how we participate together. But what you think is what you think. And I hope that in this country we're free to think all sorts of things anytime we want to. You're taught to bring your brains in. Don't park them at the door because we're going to use them a little bit later on. In the meantime, we want to get you lined up to which way you're going to be going with this. And it's fun to do it. And you find out that you can be very intelligent, but not intellectual. Now let me define that. Intellectual is what you learn in all the books, and intelligence is what you learn in life. And in this room, we've got a lot of intelligent people. I'm not anti-intellectual. There are just too many books for me to read. I can't get through them all. I used to teach speed reading to freshmen in high school. As fast as they went, that was my slowest day. So it didn't matter where they were reading, I could still outread them. Then I started teaching sophomores. And I don't know if you people ever used a tachistoscope to read with. Some of you old timers who are teaching, you say, yep, I know, I've seen them. Now, what they're doing is they're telling you to take your hand and just flash it over a page and read what's there. When I was younger, if you pointed, they'd slap your finger. You weren't supposed to point. You're just supposed to look at it and guess. I grew up in the phonetic school, so you didn't have to guess long. You put the things together. I'm for that, by the way. That's probably very unpopular. But boy, the kids that learn how to pronounce phonetically can also learn to read real fast. When that spirit of your own beingness comes present, and it's starting to do that right now in this room, there's a peace starts to move inside of you. It's not an activity. It's a quiet, but it's a warmth. How many of you are feeling that? Isn't that amazing, that thing? See, I have absolutely no control over that at all, except the ability to see it and to try to keep moving with whatever it's doing. And sometimes you do some funny dance steps. But from that place of speaking, you're not going to say anything that will purposefully hurt anyone. And you cannot not tell the truth as it comes up inside of you. You have to strengthen yourself inside of you to know that no matter what is said, what slings and arrows come your way, and what outrageous fortune you put up with, if you're not going to be honest and true to what this is inside, you might as well put on a tin bill and go out in the yard and pick manure with the chickens, because that's what your life will amount to. You're going to line up and get in some pecking order, and that'll be your education. Or you're going to stand forward as the being of spirit that's inside of you. Yeah, I know. The being inside of us, thank God, doesn't look like we look physically. There's a slight resemblance. That's from my experience. Maybe when you see it, you say, it looks just exactly like them. Fine, I'm not going to argue with anybody's experience. I worked with alcoholics in psychiatric ward who had bats coming out of the wall and snakes and butterflies, and when I went over there, there was nothing. But who am I to argue with his experience? I got to leave the ward because I had a key, and he got to stay there because he didn't. And I told him, if you keep telling people that you see snakes and butterflies and bats coming through that wall, they're never going to let you out of here. And he was absolutely shocked to think that if he didn't tell them his hallucination, something was wrong. He said, you don't tell it all. The next time they tell you what do you see, you say, no snakes, just the bats. And then tomorrow what do you tell them? Say, no bats, just a butterfly. And then the next day say, what else? You say, that's wallpaper. Then the next day, they'll let you out because they want that room for some other nut. One of the greatest lessons I had was working with psychiatrically ill people. Those are people who are probably in this room. Do you know what we do? We just learn to handle it in a way that doesn't disturb everybody. And when you start to disturb too many, they take you down to the county and lock you up for a while and shoot you full of something to quiet you down. Listen, if they come to get you and take you there, tell them, don't shoot me full of anything. I want to have this entire experience so I can finish it. If you give me something to quiet it down, I might not be able to finish the experience, and I'll be back in here in 2 weeks crazy again. Let me go ahead and go through it. Just go with me while I go through it. Just be with me. Let me know that you love me and you care for me and that I'm still a nice person, and I've just got this screw loose back here, and we're trying to tighten it down. And in the meantime, I'm having these strange experiences. One thing we have in this room right now, as strange as it may be, is a support system. You may not know or think that you're in a support system, but you are. You're in a support system with me right now. Some of you are right there, and some are sort of more back there, but everybody can't be on the firing line. Somebody's got to stand back and keep bolstering. Everyone around you is your support system once you get it in your head that you're the one to take lead of your own life. Now, I come from a lot of strange ways of looking and thinking at life because I deal with a lot of people who come from a lot of strange ways of looking and feeling at life. And I found that if you take a set, that's a judgment. You want to be careful that it's not a negative one. But if you just take a process and you just let the person keep processing through. I was on the phone the other day, long distance, talking to a young lady, entertainment world, and she's really, you would know her. She's really had a rough time, a very bad time. And she kept blaming her husband. My husband this, my husband that, my husband this, my husband that, my husband this, my husband that. I said, why don't you tell me his name? And so she did. It wasn't her name because her name was professional. And ended the conversation. Got back on the phone again later, a few days later. And my husband this, my husband that. And I said, you know, if he's that much problem, why do you hang around him? She says, well, I don't know. I said, well, get an answer to that question, why you hang around him, so you can understand what it is you're learning or you're teaching or you're supporting or what's going on. Then I heard today she's filed for divorce papers. I also heard she really wasn't married to him. Now, here comes a question. Why do you have to file divorce papers if you're really not married? So in a few days, I'm going to get a phone call back that hopefully it will have an answer to that. There's going to be some sort of legalese in there that we're all going to say, oh, yes, but of course. It's probably like, well, we never consummated the marriage, so therefore we're not married. And so now we have rules and regulations to fix our behavior with each other. But what is our behavior with each other? Are we to behave with each other? No, we really don't have to. I mean, anytime you feel like you walk out the door, it's not locked. Some people say, oh, somebody's bored, they just left. Then they come back in and they go, oh, guess they weren't bored. I guess they just had to go to the bathroom. Maybe they were bored, and it was just more boring out there. So they come back in to have a little bit of excitement, boredom, to see what's going on. So how you package this, how you present it, how you give it to them is all part of who you are. You sit and look in the mirror. I didn't finish that, so the Spirit brought me back around. You just keep looking, and at some point, the ego defense that you've used to protect you from yourself starts to move. You're going to go through some crazies, but your crazies will stop you from going insane. And you're going to see some funny things, and it's going to start to come loose. And if at that point you need counseling, you need help, there are professionals in the field who are trained to take your money as they sit and quietly listen to you talk about your crazies. That's okay. That's all balancing the karma. We give a little, we take a little, we put it here, we move it there, we take it here. But there's a key that has to be asked all the time behind everything you do, and it is this: are you being a loving person? That's the key. As you sit and listen, there's a question you have to keep asking yourself: am I being a loving listener? Not for me, for you. Am I being a loving speaker? If I have to sound a little harsh, am I still being a loving person? If the answer is no, then I have to change that. See, if you just take the idea of peace, and we look around the world and we say, there's war, there's war, there's war. How are we going to have peace? Well, they're fighting for peace. Think about that for a second. Have you ever heard of anything so stupid in your life as fighting for peace? What you do is you come inside and find the peace. And in that peace, you start to live in it, and it moves out, and peace starts to appear as a byproduct of your peace. And you don't have to fight anybody. And if we all started coming to the peace process, we would end up in one accord. We would end up in it. But we can't take issue with any one of them, because that will start the war again. But we take it and we just keep processing ourselves through it. At some point, some part of you inside is going to get angry, disgusted, depressed, upset, and that's the next part of you that needs to be brought into the peace camp. Some people say, well, I can't have peace because I'm busy judging myself. Stop judging and come to peace. And they stop judging, and they say, I didn't have to come to peace. It sort of came to me. It will be there. That's when we're in that center spot. You get into that enough, and you stay in it more regularly, and you can walk into a room full of raving maniacs, and they will start to quiet down. When I used to be a police officer, one of the officers with me said, a peace officer's peace can't be disturbed. So I thought, you got to do what I tell you. Because you can't disturb me. That's the law. That wasn't what the law was. The law was, no matter what's going on out there, I am not to get disturbed. I am to maintain the peace because I am a peace officer, a peace ambassador, a peaceful person. And I will maintain the peace. And it was absolutely phenomenal how coming out of the basketball games and all the cars are trying to get out of the parking lot. And everybody's honking horns and everybody's upset and angry. And you just go very peaceful and say, well, I'll just wait my turn. And the cars all stop and you get ushered right through and out the door. And you think, I wonder how that happened. So the next time you try to do it and you're the last one out of the lot. But you come to a place where you say, I think I'll just be quiet and wait my turn and just watch what people are doing. Some policeman points at you, blows a whistle, and says, get out of here, you're too peaceful. We want horn honkers in here. We want people who are ranting and raving. We're making our money tonight. If you just people get out of here by yourself, they won't hire us. Well, maybe they thought that. Maybe they didn't think that. Maybe I just thought it for them. But if you get the idea, you will learn more at that moment when you come to the peace than you will at any other moment in your existence. Because in the moment of peace is the ability for transcending the difficulty of your issues. Because peace does not have an issue. It has a process. Now, we're on the quest for the chalice of peace. How are we going to find that? Are we going to say to King Arthur, there's nothing that I can't do. Give me the most dastardly thing. I'll slay all the dragons. I will. That's war, folks. That's not peace. That's like a courage statement. I don't know if you know, but in that story, the most peaceful person was Mordred. He just happened to be the most cunning, deceitful one also. But if you take that part out, you go, hey, what a peaceful little guy. See, peace is not something you can see. It has no form. I remember a real good friend of mine years ago talking about when he went to school up near Berkeley. Could have been at Berkeley. And that's at the time they had the free speech movement. People remember that? We call it the filthy speech movement. Because they would stand up on boxes and just swear at the National Guard and cuss the National Guard and throw rocks at the National Guard in the name of peace. He said, and one day somebody said, you're at more war than those people. And they started bringing flowers and putting down the barrels of the rifles. And it wasn't long, and go back and check your history, until the National Guard was pulled out of there because there was nothing to do. The people, can you imagine giving a flower to somebody? You've got to be liking that person to give them a flower. Because they may read your actions wrong, incorrectly, but if you're at peace, it won't matter to you. You will give them the joy of just the giving. At some point in all of our existences, we stop the getting and we start the giving. Then we're starting to see the action of the soul as it moves. And it moves through our eyes and our mouth and our hands and our arms. And we always don't like all that. But it's still there for us to learn what it is. The more you dislike something, believe me, the more you're going to have of that until you find out what it is. And it seems like the more you like something, the faster that goes, and something you don't like comes in. Because ultimately, and this is one of those radical statements, everything here on this planet is perfect. The problem is, we don't like it that way. But how could it handle all of us and all of our different perfections unless it was perfect in a bigger perfection where it can handle each one of ours and still let us be free to keep growing? I don't think that the Spirit of divinity put us here and said, now be beggars. I do think it put us here and said, there's been people who have had a lot of experiences that can share them with you. And for sake of discussion, we'll call them teachers. We'll call them educators. We'll call them stupid at times because they probably shouldn't have been in there anyway, but they took it on. And they wondered why they took it on. But they took it on. I've seen bullfights. I saw one in Madrid, and I asked myself, what's that guy doing in there with that animal? And people were cheering. And I was standing there looking at this, and this animal would go by, and the guy would throw a cape around, and people would go, "Ole!" And I just sit there and looked at it for a while because I didn't know who they were cheering for. Were they cheering for the matador, or were they cheering for the bull? One thing for sure, I knew that that bull was going to get it because it's set up already. And how they got it and how it happened was what people were cheering about. I didn't know the rules and the regulations, so I just sort of cheered with everybody. But I was happier when it was over. And what did I learn out of that? The symbolism of it was to subjugate the lower nature so the higher nature can be free. And I immediately said, whoa, that's just the ego and the spirit. I translated it into my way of thinking and understood, gestalted what that was all about, what the society was about, how the things worked. And it just started tracing itself. And all I was doing was running behind what was going on, trying to catch up, to participate in it, to understand it, to get involved with it. I know it moves very fast, and I know it doesn't wait on my personality. And if I don't open up and start right now going, it don't look back. Was that good English? It doesn't look back. Well, would you like good English or good information? Well, could we have both? Not for me, you don't. Once in a while, I'll do it correctly. But when you're working with the spirit of the counseling, sometimes you find yourself using words with a person that you don't use in conversation with anybody else. And you're wondering where those words come from. And you ask the person, have you heard these words before? They say, yes, that's what my dad used to say all the time, and that's what my problem is. But I realized that my dad wasn't such a bad person because you just said the same words, and you're a nice person. Bam goes the problem. Does it clear up in a hurry? Sometimes it's so fast that we should shut up and say, it's over. But sometimes we think we've got to say it because it was in my mind to say this thing, so I'll keep going until I overdo it. Soul-centered counseling is to first know yourself and to your own self be true. Then you can't be false to anybody else. Our job is, no matter where we go, no matter what we listen to find something that we can take to ourselves and take out no matter where we go and start to utilize that. Start to develop it as a talent, as a masterful talent. People will come to you when you're ready to have them come to you. Maybe we've all got to walk up to the line and stand there and put our body on the line and participate in our life and keep rolling with it, keep moving with it. And every day that the sun comes up, we get up to come with it. But there's one thing that's important. If you don't have an attitude of loving and caring, there's no need to walk too close to the line, because you'll just be blocking the way. And sometimes we have to have the wit to step aside and let somebody else in that slot. That takes a lot of smarts to know when to stand back. You endure to the end. You just keep at it, but you don't get angry. You don't get anything in that level. You just say, we're going to get this, and here's the process we're going to go by it, and all of those in agreement, get in line, and let's go. And then we find out where our place is in line, and we go. And we do it. I think I wrote a book, yeah. It's called, and then you do it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, borrow it and read it. It's simple. It's so anyone can do it. If I had a wish, I do, because I have a wish, that whatever I didn't say to you here tonight, I wish that you get that anyway. I wish that it goes into your heart, into who you are, and brings that light brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter until people say, what is it that we're seeing down in that area that is so bright? And someone will say, these are the students that have matriculated to these universities and colleges. They're past the education. They're now into the doing of it, and the living of it, and the being of it. That's what we want to see take place. We are seeing it take place. You people that are in these universities, you're seeing it take place. You're seeing people let go and come alive. You often wonder, that person can't get anything, the Spirit moves and they got everything. And so we stop the judging and we start supporting. Don't be afraid to support anybody, because in the supporting, you will be supported. I don't know if you know it, but when I give something, it is so neat when they take it. It's not Christmas time once a year. It's just all the time. It's the awakening to the value. I'm not going to talk to you about values. I'm not going to talk to you about anything else. I would like to leave you with this thought. If no one else loves you, love yourself. Because ultimately, that's who you're going to end up with.
Barulho especial.